Hello everybody, my name is Xavier. I'm a junior here at Worcester Polytechnic Institute studying robotics engineering, and my role on the team is prototyping and mechanical engineering and design.
Hey everyone, my name is Max. I'm a sophomore studying robotics engineering and computer science. On the team I'm working on the media as well as design.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about the scoring of this year's game as well as some of the power-ups that were implemented in this year's game. So in a perfect game, we have calculated that the maximum amount of points you can achieve is 524. And this is broken down by the following. So at the very beginning, during autonomous, you would have 3 robots moving into the autonomous zone or crossing the autonomous line for 15 points. And then you would have a 15-second possession of the scale and the switch during that autonomous period for an additional 64 points. So once you move into teleoperated mode, there would be points gained through having the blocks in the vault or the cubes in the vault for 45 points, as well as having ownership of the scale and the switch for 135 seconds, which would net you 270 points. Once you have the boost available, you can gain an additional 40 points using the boost power-up, and at the very end, for the end game, you would have 3 robots climbed to the top for an additional 90 points. So it's impossible to have possession of both for the entire match, but if you had both the switch and the scale for most of the time, you would end up with close to 400 points. These scores are for a perfect game, and it's due to high variability or all the variables in the game. It's very impossible that this would actually happen.
So now thinking of a kind of a more realistic scoring of how we think early events are going to go. By our calculations, we're thinking that most matches will be around 120 points, somewhere between 100 and 120. And that's broken down by still 3 robots crossing the auto line for 15 points, and then having somewhere between 4 and 5 cubes in the vault, 3 of them in Levetate, and then 1 or 2 in either force or boost. We're assuming 30 seconds of ownership in teleop, and then at the end 2 parked robots, and then the free climb from the Levetate power up, and this results in roughly 100 points without penalties, which we think is how the early events are going to play out.
So the next thing we wanted to talk about is how you should be thinking about earning points during the game. And what this comes down to is the point differential and how many points you're earning and how many points your opponent is earning as time progresses throughout the game. This is broken down into several different types. So you can have a 2-point differential, which is the ownership of all 3 of the scoring areas: your switch, your opponent's switch, and the scale. You can have a 1-point differential in your favor, in which you own only the scale and either of the switches. So you could have an offensive strategy where you're owning your opponent's switch, or you could have a defensive strategy where you're owning your switch. But as long as you own the scale and one of those switches, you will be earning a 1-point differential over your opposing alliance. Alternatively, there is you could have no points gained for either alliance, which is if you owned only the scale or both the switches.
So one of the unique aspects of this game are the 3 power-ups that you can earn: Levitate, Force, and Boost. Levitate is possibly the most powerful of which, where if you get 3 cubes and activate it, your alliance gets a free climb, which is 30 points, and can also help add to the crucial extra ranking point. What's unique about this one is you must have 3 cubes. There are no lower tiers, and we think that this is going to be the most powerful one at competitions, both for that extra ranking point and because the 30 points you gain from it is the highest score that you can get out of a power-up. And we also think that this is super crucial because the climbing bar is so small that fitting 3 robots on it will be extremely difficult, so getting 1 for free is definitely a big bonus.
So the second power-up, the Force, gives you for 10 seconds ownership of a field element, and this depends on the different tiers of the cubes in your vault. If you have 1 cube, you gain ownership of your alliances switch. If you have 2 cubes in the vault, you gain ownership of the scale. And if you have 3 cubes, you gain ownership of your alliances switch and the scale. When thinking about strategy, the total amount of points that you can gain from this is 20. If you own your alliances, if you own your opponent's switch and the scale, and you activate the 1 cube Force power-up, then you gain ownership of the entire field, and that goes back to that 2-point differential we were talking about earlier. So for 10 seconds, you will get 2 points over your opponent, and that will give you 20 points in total. This can alternatively be done by owning your opponent's switch and activating the 3 cube Force power up, meaning that you would then own all 3 elements of the field and gain those 2 points for the 10 seconds.
So the final power up is Boost, this is very similar to Force in that it acts for 10 seconds. It also has the same tiers for cubes, such that 1 it acts for your alliance switch, 2 is for the scale, and then 3 is for both. And what this does is it increases the point value from 1 point to 2 points per second for that allotted 10 seconds. So this is only useful if you actually have control of those elements, and if so, it doubles the points. Otherwise, you still gain no points, so it's kind of a wasted power-up, so you have to decide when to use this one very strategically. The possibly most risky power-up is the Boost, which this is only useful if you can ensure possession for the 10 seconds that it's active. So this will probably involve a strategy where you activate this at an appropriate time, and then your whole alliance will pivot to playing defense for 10 seconds to ensure to maximize the score you can get from that. Also, another very interesting thing about this game is the time-based scoring and how preventing your opponents from gaining points is just as effective as actually gaining points yourself. So say if you're for the minimum competitive concept that doesn't necessarily incorporate a floor intake into their design, the human player station is significantly closer to your opponent's switch than your own. So scoring a lot of cubes in there to prevent them from actually gaining points is just as useful as your alliance itself actually gaining points. So you have to look at this game very in depth because there's a lot of, it's very multifaceted, and you have to decide what's best for your own team. So something interesting we realized about the rules is that you can potentially get the ranking point for facing the boss without actually scaling on the run. You can do this in a similar way that many robots lifted in 2007, where one robot deploys arms on either side and then lifts the other 2 robots up 12 inches. And so because you are fully supported by the platform, which is part of the switch, and those 2 robots are above the bricks, those 2 count as climbing, and then if you activate the Levitate power-up, the robot that has the 2 ramps also gets the climb points. So this is a very, assuming it's legal and stays legal, we also think that this might be something that wasn't an intended consequence, and so maybe changed in one of the first team updates. But if it does stay around, it's a very powerful strategy because you can almost guarantee in quals that you will get that extra ranking point for facing the boss because all your allies have to do is drive up onto the ramp. But that being said, it's not at all easy to pull off, but we're sure to see some very interesting strategies coming.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to follow us on all the social media so you can keep updated with all of our updates as we build this robot in 3 days. And good luck building and have fun this year and the FRC season.
Make sure to follow our social media and our build blog to stay tuned to any updates.